morning, good afternoon, good evening. The people of Zimbabwe have got to question the sincerity of our opposition leaders, specifically their sincerity in fighting to defend the Constitution of Zimbabwe. They have made a mountain out of a molehill of this so-called ED 2030. And the proposed suggestion that Zanu PF wants to amend the constitution to allow Mnangagwa to stay in office beyond 2028. As much as everyone who have been following that story would agree that such an amendment will indeed compromise our constitution, it must, however, be said and stated very clearly here that this is not the only way Zanu PF has undermined the constitution, and more significantly, have denied the people of Zimbabwe a meaningful say in the governance of the country. The most important time when the nation had the opportunity to end the Zanu PF dictatorship, it must be said, was during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. The opposition had 5 years to implement the democratic reforms, and yet they failed to implement even one token reform. And to make matters worse, they've been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that doing so will give Zanu PF legitimacy. They've been doing so out of greed. That is at the heart of the argument. Why have they been doing that? Greed, incompetence. And now, since Mnangagwa came up with this ED 2030, they want to appear as if they are the champions fighting in the people's corner. I think that is totally dishonest. I'd like you to watch this video of the elections in 2013.
Einer hat gesagt, sie kommen von weiter, der andere hat gesagt, sie sagen hier Resident.
Don't give a statement, President. Which I can take what Chendambuya. How can we cheat Zatan like that? How can we cheat like this?
There are some buses which are here.
Two buses there. One street in Mount Pleasant. One street. I think we shouldn't allow this. Officer, we don't want to be accused of disruptiveness, but this is not on. We can't allow this. Ask anyone which clean show van. Ask this one, where does he stay in Mount Pleasant?
I refer you to my senior at Mount Pleasant.
All right, I'm going there. Yeah. But you can see his reading about it.
Yeah, but we take note of it.
We
but
can't.
you don't take note of them. Stop around.
That's why
Stop.
We'll stop around. Because this is not on, that we can have this blatant cheating. From the raw areas, yes. Taken to thing. And then posing as officers. They've been bussed by those buses, as you can see. As one of them, a single address in Mount Pleasant. Just one. You need a bus to come from Morris Depot. Morris Depot is just across the road. You need a bus to come from Morris Depot.
But their sleeves retain one place.
So where were they carried with buses?
Just take the sample of 5. Go to the water suit with the sleeves. You find them not in the water suit.
They're not in the voters' roll.
But their sleeves retain one place, and so we don't have the powers. So
When you are recruited, you have to shave your head into the police.
So you think they are in the police in a
They're
role?
not genuine.
Not genuine.
Those fake ones that
fake
are reacting for the
Right.
The militias.
You can see from the cut that
It's fresh cards and so on.
they are just taken from.
What is interesting about this video is that Tendai BT was up in arms when he saw the evidence of the blatant cheating that was taking place. And rightly so too. But what is interesting here is that when the results came out and he realized that he had won in Mount Pleasant in 2013, he forgot about it. It was a no issue to him. Of course, the blatant cheating that was taking place in Harare was taking place in every part of the country, more so in the rural areas. And indeed, one of the most consistent thing about Zimbabwe's opposition has been that leaders like Tendai BT, when it comes to elections, they will fight tooth and nail to have a constituency in urban centers. Because they know that in the urban centers, the cheating that Zanu PF is doing, as we saw in this video clip, is not primarily meant to win that constituency per se, but to boost the votes of the presidential candidate of Zanu PF. In other words, Zanu PF will let the opposition win a few of those urban constituencies. And as long as the opposition win those few urban seats, they've been willing to turn a blind eye to the blatant rigging of elections elsewhere. This is the contradiction. This is the problem we have had in Zimbabwean elections. Indeed, this is the reason why the opposition have stubbornly ignored the recommendations by all election observers that Zimbabwe's elections are flawed and you need to implement democratic reforms if you're going to have free, fair, and credible elections. They don't care about those reforms as long as they win the few gravy train seats. And this point has been made again and again and abundantly clear in such books as David Coulthard's book, in which Coulthard admitted that the most logical thing that the opposition should have done was to withdraw from these flawed electoral processes. In the book, he says the election was so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step was to withdraw. But he did not withdraw because they also knew that Zanu PF was giving away a few Gravitrans seats to allow some of the opposition to get into power. And it is for that reason they've kept on participating. But he is also admitting here that by participating, he and his fellow opposition leaders knew that they are giving Zanu PF legitimacy. So we should not be surprised here that as much as Tendai Biti was up in arms, that Zanu PF was blatantly rigging and denying him a Gravitrans seat. When he realized that he had won it, all his problems evaporated. He did not want to pursue the issue. The blatant cheating was no longer an issue to him. Although he knew that the blatant cheating that we saw in that video was not only happening in urban centers, it was happening all over the country. Indeed, in the rural areas, the situation is even worse. As we saw in 2023 elections, where FAS, Zanu PF operatives set up a bench a few meters from the polling station, and they were checking the voters as they went in. In the rural areas, Zanu PF's control over the electorate is total. Indeed, it's no exaggeration to say that the rural voters are no more than serfs in medieval times, beholden to the Zanu PF ruling elite and their proxies in the form of war veterans, Zanu PF Youth League, traditional leaders like headmen and the chiefs, and the Zanu PF leaders themselves. That is the reality. Here is a video of Margaret Dongo emphasizing the point I'm trying to make here, that Zanu PF, that opposition leaders have been participating in these flawed elections out of greed.
This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business. Because they look at it as a business, seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation, because if they go to parliament, you are employed. You get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you are out, you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
The Virgin Media Black Friday sale is here. With our entertainment bundle, you get
And then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in parliament. This is why we have violence in this country, because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, a very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the Triple C party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system. And we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way Zanu PF was going to rule alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you? I used my own money. So the idea is to recover. Is it a business where you want to recover your losses? Is it a business? Politics.
Exactly. Is politics a business? Particularly in a country where the opposition, the people, have voted for the opposition with the important task that they will implement the democratic reforms and restore the individual citizens' right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That has been at the heart of our opposition. Zanu PF has been rigging elections since 1980. When MDC was formed, it was on the understanding that the party would implement the democratic changes necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. That was the primary purpose. And they called their party Movement for Democratic Change. And yet, 25 years down the line, including 5 years in the GNU, they've not implemented even one token reform. And not only that, they are the ones who have been conning people to participate in flawed elections, telling them this time we are going to win. Hashtag God is in it. I'm preparing my cabinet. It is God's plan that we will win.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going.
Of course, Chamisa was lying. He knew it. People like Tendai Biti knew he was lying. But they all participated in 2023 because they were hoping to win the few gravy train seats they knew Zanu PF gives away to entice the opposition to participate. It is interesting to note here that soon after the 2023 elections, Mnangagwa declared that he had aspirations, or rather his cronies, that he should stay beyond 2028. And it's amazing how the fact that Zanu PF had rigged the 2023 elections, SADC, the AU, all confirmed that those elections were flawed. Yet the opposition conveniently ignored that. And now they're taking up the fight to stop Mnangagwa corrupting the constitution to extend his stay in power. As if Mnangagwa staying in power is the only corruption of the constitution that has taken place in Zimbabwe all these years. That is nonsense. Mnangagwa stay corrupting the constitution so that he stays in power, in my view, is a side issue. Because what will it achieve? He will stay on as Zanu PF dictator. What is the alternative? Zanu PF rigging 2028 and having another dictator stay in. As long as Zanu PF is able to rig the 2028 elections, if Mnangagwa was to fail to amend the constitution, we will still have a Zanu PF dictator in 2028 or post 2028. Whereas if we were to stop Zanu PF rigging 2028 elections, even if Mnangagwa was to amend the constitution, it will be of no effect. Because if we stop Zanu PF rigging 2028, what we will have done is stop Zanu PF and the Zanu PF dictatorship. And the Zanu PF, ending the Zanu PF dictatorship will force Mnangagwa to give up, even if he had managed to change the constitution. What is most likely to happen in 2028 is that without any amendments, any reforms being implemented, the elections will go ahead, and with the same spirit that we see with the opposition right now, they will participate in their millions, giving that process legitimacy. Whereas if we were to focus on the issue of if there are no meaningful democratic reforms, people should not participate in those elections. It will force SADC and the AU to deny Zanu PF legitimacy. I've said at the beginning that if MDC guys had not participated in the 2023 elections, SADC and the AU would have not given Zanu PF legitimacy. They know it. It's not as if it's me who's saying it. They themselves in the opposition camp, they know it. They know that by participating in these flawed elections, they are giving Zanu PF legitimacy. So what we are seeing here with the opposition is that as much as they want to take up the fight to stop Mnangagwa 2030, they are not willing to take up the fight to stop, first of all, to get Mnangagwa to implement the reforms. They had the chance to do so themselves, they failed to do so, and now they've given up on reforms. But more significantly, they are not prepared to stop participating in these flawed elections. They will participate in their numbers in 2028, giving Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuating the dictatorship. The ED 2030 has only given them the smoke screen to justify ignoring the issue of reforms and free and fair elections. This is an important point. And I think the people of Zimbabwe should not be so easily conned by these people. We should be smart enough to realize what is going on here. Why we have continued to have rigged elections 25 years after the formation of MDC, including the 5 years in the GNU, when Tendai BT and company had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms. We should be smart enough to realize that the opposition in Zimbabwe will continue to participate in flawed elections because they know they will get a few of the gravy train seats, and that's all they care about. We should be smart enough to realize we are being taken for a ride. The fight to stop Mnangagwa corrupting the Constitution is not really the fight we want. The fight we want is to end the dictatorship. We are not interested in having another dictator post-2028, be it Mnangagwa himself or somebody else. And that fight means concentrating on fighting to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Stopping the opposition participating in flawed elections to give the vote rigging Zanu PF the excuse to stay in power. It's not rocket science. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.